Hello, welcome back to the This Is Me podcast. I'm Karen.
And I'm Ellie, and today we have Rachel joining us. Rachel is a high-performance coach committed to future-proofing organisations through the development of talent. Today, Rachel has trained over 600 individuals across 12 countries, helping them leverage coaching as a vital part of their professional toolkit. So, Rachel, thank you very much for joining us today. And to start with, just tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and how you got into the position that you're in today.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for having me on, both of you. I'm excited to talk to you and share a bit more about my story. So before I moved to the US, I grew up in the UK, from the north of England, like very proudly represent the north.
Yes, come on.
Finished my linguistics degree and then realised I didn't want to do anything related to linguistics after college or university. And then took a couple different jobs. My first, I say, kind of proper job, because I worked for Primark, I worked as a waitress, when I was younger. I worked for Hallmark, so I was a marketing assistant there. Then moved on to PepsiCo for 3 years, and that kind of gave me my, I think, really first taste of corporate life and like what that meant, going on a grad scheme, doing that whole thing. Then once I got married, I realized that, hey, I've married this person. It's probably going to be a good idea that we live in the same country, the US. And then when I moved here, started my coaching career. And so I started my business. So we can probably get more into how and why I decided to start that. But that's kind of a whistle stop. Tour of what I did.
Perfect. So then how did you go from Hallmark into coaching?
So it's really interesting, because I think if you'd asked me when I was younger, I would have said, oh, I always wanted to be a CEO. Like that was one of the things I wanted to be. No idea, I think, at that stage what a CEO did or why I wanted to be a CEO, but I think there was something, just maybe it's about the films I watched when I was growing up, seeing women in sort of these powerful positions and having their own careers, and that really just excited me. Found the internship with Hallmark, and that was based on cards, so something like not really related to anything I'd done in college, but I loved going into stores and just seeing all the designs and things that they had done. Worked there for 6 months, taught me a huge amount about people, working with people. I'm trying to pick my words carefully, and I don't know why, because it was a really great experience and I really loved my time there. But I think I had quite a few pivotal moments of having to stand up for myself, or having to just assert myself early on in my career, that then when I moved to Pepsi for the graduate scheme, I found that as a business so much easier to navigate, because I felt like I almost had my trial run in Hallmark. When I had the difficult conversations or tricky people, then when I found myself at Pepsi, I thought, oh, okay, you're another one of this character, or actually I didn't do that, and so I need to get my networking skills up, so I need to improve that when I'm at Pepsi. And then when I moved to America, that was a very hard kind of cut off. I had to leave my job in the UK. And I was just very surprised, because it's very different over here. They really value education, and that was a really big surprise for me. Not that they valued education, but just the barriers to not having a master's. I'd come from a background in the UK where people on my grad scheme had done history, geology, chemistry. I did linguistics, but it didn't matter. We were going to, go and sell chips, crisps for Pepsi. Whereas over here, people had done marketing, then they do their masters, or maybe they do an MBA, then they do a concentration in marketing. And I was turning up with a linguistics background, 3 years of quality experience, running $20 million P&Ls. So I had the sales experience, but it just floored me, because so many companies didn't really want to know. They said, well, where's your degree? Where's your MBA? Where's your master's? I said, oh, I've got 3 years experience. And it was almost like that didn't count, which to me felt crazy, but just culturally, that's just how it is over here. It's really different.
That is really interesting, because how do I say this without doxing anyone? Not that they'll be listening anyway, but I know
what does
someone
doxing mean?
out in a person, not like giving personal information out about people. I know somebody who, they are based in the UK, but they work for an American company. and they are in constant fear of being found out because they don't have a degree. And I thought,
God.
but you've been in the job for donkey, and I'm not joking, donkey's years. You've done the job, you know you can do it well. But genuinely, this real fear of, but I don't have a degree and maybe they'll find out. And I thought, yeah, but you've done the job. They know you can do the job. But okay, maybe hearing you say that makes me think, oh, right, now I sort of understand a bit more the panic about not having the elusive degree.
Can I, Rach, if you were like, that's a really interesting point. Like that, I think maybe somebody listening to this who's thinking about maybe moving to America or whatever. How did you? Sorry, how did you not know that there was a degree? Was it because you just assumed coming from the UK? And second part of it, how would you help other people who were like moving over there to think about that? Because I had never even given that a thought at all.
The biggest thing I learned when I moved here was that networking, and people say that all the time, right? Your net worth is your network is a phrase around here. People love saying it. It's really cringe, but people love saying that, and I found that
say that
to
again.
be
Your net worth
your
is your net
worth is your
work.
network.
Right, I'm going to say that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Probably at the gym.
Really to be true. Like when I moved here, I knew my husband obviously, but apart from him, no idea about this area, no idea about the industries that existed here. And so typically if I was in the UK, I'd go on Indeed, maybe on LinkedIn, and I'd look for a job that way. But at this point, I'm postgraduate scheme age and I'm not in education. So internships are out at a lot of these companies. And even though I had a work permit at that stage, I'm thinking, okay, how can I put myself in a position to land a job? And I started working with recruiters. And so I reached out to this one recruiter, and it was her who gave me this, play by play of the area, the industry, the business. It was like someone had just opened my eyes about the dynamics of, politically, geographically, just the workforce development within this area, what trends had been happening. And I went in for that meeting, showed her my CV, and she said something really interesting to me. She said, what do you really want to do? Like, if you, didn't have to like try and get a job in this same field, like, what do you really want to do? And I said, well, my mum's been a coach for a long time. And I think at some point I'll probably try and do some kind of coaching, but I need more experience. And she said, well, why don't you just do it now? And I said, well, I've just moved here. That would be starting a brand new business. I don't have any clients. And she said, no, I think you could help me. I think, I would be happy to be your first client. And she became my first client and really a mentor she was the one who boosted me to start my business and say, go for it. Because she had started her own recruitment firm that now in the area is one of the most successful,
That's amazing.
millions a year in turnover. And she's not just hugely successful financially, but I think as a person in terms of what she's done for the community, being a female only business. It's she was a fantastic person to me. If I hadn't met her, probably wouldn't have had the confidence to start the business.
Yeah.
How did that sit with your I want to be a CEO ambition? Like how did you sort of I don't think the word is deal with it, but how did you reframe it, and why did that feel that was the right thing to do? Was it purely because she'd moved, or was it because she'd had that conversation or opportunities?
I think I got to the end of my time at Pepsi and realized that actually talking to trading directors and haggling over, like cost per unit prices, it just wasn't, I didn't enjoy that. I didn't feel fired up by it. And I don't really think I was probably that good at it. So
wow.
and I got the chance to have a conversation with her and, have a bit of a test run with somebody. I think just doing it with her, feeling safe in that environment to just kind of go for it, that gave me the confidence that we'd had a good conversation. I felt like I'd genuinely shifted something, or I'd helped her within that. Then realizing, okay, this thing that you want to do, maybe you can do it. Maybe you're actually quite good at it. That would give you the autonomy. They give you the freedom. You get to decide your clients, pick the time scale, all this stuff that to me felt very attractive, because I think, becoming a CEO, I think as I look back, I equated it to freedom of my time, movement, who I work with, all of that, and not being constrained by a kind of corporate system, which I'm happy in corporate. I do like working those businesses, but I saw for my father who worked for Primark, I saw him navigate that, and I saw how political it can be at the top, and I had glimpses of that at Pepsi. And I just thought, longer term, I don't see myself wanting to go in and fight and play that game within my career. So at that point, it felt like the reframe of CEO for me was freedom, and this could be my step to be able to do that.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people would to sort of equate the same thing. You're in a position of power, I guess. Like you've got to the top. You've done what you said you were going to do. You do sort of think, and then I'll have all the money and the time in the world. And the reality is, you'll have so little time because you've got a company to run. But I suppose you have hit CEO status. It's just not how you. Like, it's your own company. It's not how you'd probably initially thought about it as you were growing up.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So how long have you been like setting up your own business now? Because one of the things that we're interested in is like people that are making that decision at this moment. How far are you into it, and what have been some of the biggest challenges, or some of the like nicest things that you found with it? Would be great to hear.
So when did I set it up? I think I've been 2 years. I'll have to go back and check officially.
Approximately is all right.
I think about 2 years. I know when I signed that first client and I spoke to my mum about it, who's been a coach for over a decade, and she said, okay, if this is something you're going to want to do, you're going to need to get professional training, and I think that would be something interesting to talk about on here is, we've talked about classification, being a coach in the US, being a coach in the UK, saying that, I think it's a huge difference because of how many varieties there are over here and how unclassified that term is.
It's unregulated, isn't it? Yeah.
Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, I thought that's what you were looking for, yeah.
Like, I could go online and I could do a half-an-hour course and I could get a certificate and I can say I'm a coach. Or you could do what I did and you can do, a coach credited training program through the ICF and have the months of not only being trained to do that, the practice, the validation, the exams, all these different things. But at the end of the day, both of us are coming and we're both saying we're a coach. But actually, our education and our training level is vastly different. So when I started, I knew I wanted to get trained professionally. I knew I wanted to have the practice. And then it became a question of, okay, what type of coach do I want to be? If I'm going to set this business up, where should I go? Who should I try and target? So initially I started the business to help younger professionals. So people like me and my peers at Pepsi who were ambitious, maybe they were grad scheme, post-grad scheme, couple of years, but felt as though they needed more of that one-on-one support to help boost their career. So what key problems were they going through? Confidence and imposter syndrome is a huge challenge for some of the younger people I work with. So finding that balance between, yes, I'm ambitious and I want to grow my career, but I also want to put myself first and create this kind of healthy mental, this healthy mental environment for myself while I do that. Versus maybe if I look back at my parents or other people from that generation where you didn't have time to stop and ask yourself those questions, you just had to get on and do. So that's really who I first started to work with. And then interestingly, the more I would go out and say I work with young professionals, I would be in the rooms with executives and these leaders, and they would say, oh, I think you could help me. So even though I was presenting as I'm helping young professionals, quite quickly it morphed into more of that more experienced leader professional. And I think that was quite an interesting dynamic to then figure out how on earth do I brand this? Because, I'm fairly junior in my career. I don't have 10, 20 years experience in the corporate sector. And now I'm going to be an executive coach and that's going to be widely received. Actually, there's a interesting power dynamic as, yes, I'm a coach. So we're kind of, here for those listening, I'm putting my hands at like the same.
I'm nodding.
Yes. Whereas maybe not as their coach, I'm coming into that conversation maybe a little bit lower than them because I'm junior, but suddenly you have this cross-generational conversation happening where we're both peers in the conversation. And I think that was really
I think it also says a lot about, not to get down a rabbit hole, but as you know, I'm a chartered coaching psychologist and have many views on this. There's a real thing about junior and higher and level, but coaching isn't about that.
Yeah.
Coaching isn't, mentorship is slightly different because it's about wisdom, but I still don't think that's experience related. I do think that that's really interesting if someone comes to a coaching conversation with junior and higher. It's an interesting exploration, isn't it? Do you know,
Yeah.
like it's it fascinates me, that perception. And I think as a coach, you've got to be aware of when you're not the right coach, but that's not to do with levels. Do you know,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
it's
And I think as well, like, and then hysterical because I'm not in any way able to practice what I preach by saying this, but I think sometimes it's only you that knows that you're not, like, do you know what I mean? That they don't know anything, or they don't know anything about you. They don't know, and not even in just coaching, in any other thing, because I've got friends who've started their own businesses in vastly different circumstances, and they're like, but I've never done it before and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, nobody else on this planet knows that. It's you know it, nobody else knows it. So I think it is an interesting, maybe sort of that imposter syndrome thing, or maybe that just sort of, oh god, I feel like a fraud. But
I think it's also like, there's a guy called Tom Peters who you'll know because he's American, who had his day a few years ago. Apologies, Tom, if you're listening. And he said that when you say, I've had 18 years experience, what he said, the big question is, have you had 18 years experience doing the same thing every year? So you've only had one year's experience,
right,
18
yeah.
times. What he's saying is, and I think that's a whole interesting debate, I think particularly for women, about you said it earlier, what does experience mean? What does experience look like? Where are we judging that? Like and it's a female thing more about experience. Because actually, one of the things that drives me insane about some of the coaching organizations is they assess your coaching on number of hours coached.
Yeah.
So, number of hours coached, but you could be, anyway, you could be hopeless. So I think there's something we have to do about changing the narrative about this. You know, I think you vaguely mentioned it, Rach, but it's really interesting to hear about why in America you're like in the UK to start your own business isn't seen as a thing for younger people to do. What did America give you that you wouldn't have had in the UK that gave you that platform? Because I think that's so interesting for people to hear.
I feel like the biggest thing here was local community. And it's not that
Right.
doesn't exist in the UK, but I think here there is that spirit which exists within the culture, which is hugely entrepreneurial. They love an underdog. They want to see you win. They want to, you know, like win at the end, like ultimately. And so when I moved here, so I got that first client and she was talking to me about how she started her business and saying, no, you should do this, you can do this. And then I was doing some more research, and my local Chamber of Commerce every year runs 2 boot camp programs, a summer and a fall winter one. And effectively, what this does is, I think through 12 or 16 weeks, they bring in experts in all different areas. You write a business plan, you present that at the end, and then there's a competition. So for me, I'm thinking, okay, you had to pay for it, but these will be local business leaders. So we had a finance one, we had competitor analysis, we had research, we had marketing, all these industry leaders coming in and giving me 2 hours. In fact, there were 2 sessions each week, so 4 hours every single week, instruction on how do I write a business plan, how do I set this business up, vetting the market that I want to speak to throughout this process. I finished that and I came second in the competition and I won a prize. And I think going through that boot camp, being exposed to all those different leaders who were volunteering their
It's
time.
really good, that, isn't it? That's a lot
Really?
of hours.
Yeah, it's a lot.
How many people were on it? How many people would they do it for?
We started, I think, with about 25, and I think maybe there were like 12 towards the end, 10 or 12 towards the end, because it was a big commitment,
isn't it?
Yeah. For me, I was lucky enough that I was able to start that and give my all to the business.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, they were doing full-time jobs.
Yeah.
And so again, that was kind of difficult. But to answer your question more clearly, I think the spirit of the people here, they want to see you succeed. They want to see you set up a business. And I think people's openness networking, as I said at the start.
Yeah.
I would go to these events and I would say, oh, I'm starting this business, it's on this. And all of a sudden, someone would tap me on the shoulder and say, oh, you need to meet this person over here. And then I would go and be introduced to this person. There seems to be much more freedom of introductions here, that people feel more pride about being the connector than being the connection at the other end. Yeah.
One of the things we work with in the women's arena, and you all have come across this in the UK, is networking is a dirty word. Do you know, it comes with like networking. I hate it, which I think that is really, really interesting, that there's that spirit of connection for the greater good, not wanting to sound like something strange, but I think that's really interesting. I'd be really interested to come back about spirit as well, because me and Ellie have noticed a theme coming out, haven't we? About community and belonging, and people.
I was thinking about that because there's a couple of episodes there where I was absolutely obsessed by the topic. Because sorry, Karen.
No, don't worry, it's fine. It's just we seem to have lost that in the UK arena about belonging, community, mattering. Do you know, and networking. So I guess it's really interesting that when you went over there, it must have been such a shock from the British culture. Especially coming from the companies you work for as well.
Yes, all the networking was typically inside that company. I mean, I think that was always been a skill of mine when I was younger. So networking, to me, I was never shy about that. Like Hallmark, I remember doing a really great piece of work. We were trying to get this Father's Day card published online, and I worked with my own team to do it because I was given no budget. And I thought, no, we're going to do a social media post. It's going to be good. We're going to help sell out the stock. Anyway, we do it and we sell out the next day before Father's Day. And I'm coming to my desk. I'm sat there and I'm thinking, okay, incoming the praise. I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
My the leader of our Unix, I worked on the M&S account. He sat down. He's like, morning, everyone, carries on. And I'm thinking, does he not just do what me, the marketing team, nothing? Okay. And then, I went to a town hall and I heard the CEO, who was a Australian lady called Amanda, just talking about, the business, and this wasn't going right and this was good. And I thought, okay, less so about myself, but more the designers who were down in the basement, who'd done all this craft work, they'd put the time into it. I'd asked people to give their time to this, not promising them anything, but I just felt like, they deserved a bit of a, congratulations, because I could see the link between the sales and what we'd done. And so I remember her coming down to go to the canteen, and I kind of accosted her. And so I think I probably shouted at her. I said, oh, hi, my name is Rachel. I worked on the M&S account. We did this. I'd really like to come in your office and talk to you about it. And I must have gone bright red or something. She said, okay.
Breathe.
A little bit like that. And she said, my PA is down the hall, go chat to her and I'll see you. So then I went, tried to book a meeting, as ever, because she's obviously the CEO, a very busy lady. It got rebooked. So then I went back to her desk, had a bit more of a chat, tried to get rebooked. And I sat down and we'd had such a good conversation. And she said, oh, I had no idea this had even happened. And to me, that was a bit of a light bulb moment, that it wasn't about, me needing the praise, which it started as from the M&S desk, but to say there's all this great work and all this great stuff that happens. It's not that she didn't care to know, but no one had brought it to her attention. And so then the following day, I had the vice president come over to the desk, congratulated the whole team. He, said some nice things to the designers. Then the boss of the desk had said some good stuff, and I ended up presenting at the next town hall on what we did and how we should roll this out more broadly in the company. And for me, I feel like that when I was saying at the start of this podcast, Hallmark was kind of my testing bed of things. Is it going to work? I knew I wasn't going to be there forever. So it allowed me the chance to play and take risks. Exactly. Like it didn't matter.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because that does take some courage to go, hang on a minute, I'm going to go and ask the CEO what on earth's going on here. Do you know what I mean? So that's interesting that's how you got to it, because you sort of knew that it was like you weren't going to be there forever, sort of thing. Yeah.
And then I always knew that networking isn't just about who you want to know, it's about who are the other people that sit around that person. So whenever I'm talking to like young people and the coaching that I do, I always say, okay, don't just think about like who you're trying to get to at the top or whatever that looks
Yeah.
like. There are two other groups I think people ignore, which are the super connectors. So they may be in high ranks, they may be not, but these are people who have great networks. They're happy to be the connector. They know a huge amount of, information. And then the other one are the people who are often overlooked, which are the personal assistants. And like
Oh
you'll
my
know
God,
this.
there's right security guards right high up there.
Yeah, they're the people who decide if your meeting gets cut, if your meeting stays. They're the trusted advisor of these people. And I feel like early on I learned that it doesn't matter what somebody's title is, you have to treat everyone with respect and you have to treat every conversation as worthy. And so therefore, when I would go to these networking events and you'd see people just think, are you important? Okay, no, I'm going to move on and speak to somebody else. But actually, by not doing that and treating everybody with respect and having conversations,
Yeah.
maybe this person went to school with this person, and that's what I found here because it's quite a small community. I
Right.
was engaging with people that suddenly, oh, I had no idea they knew this person, and I was able to be introduced in, I think, probably a much better way than
Yeah.
accosting somebody like I did for a man.
You've got a neighborhood reputation.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want
So
that.
what have you found have been some of the things you personally have really loved about setting up your own business? So not necessarily, yeah, I know that the clients are great and how you help them, but personally for you as a woman of our time, what are some of the things that you've really loved about it?
I'm going to come back to that word freedom. I've
Yeah,
loved the fact
yeah,
that I've been able to, um, work in chunks. And I've got family abroad, both my husband's family and my family. So I can say, right, in December, we are going to
yeah,
take 4 weeks off, or, my mum's going to be coming to stay. I'm going to take these 3 weeks off. And particularly in a culture like America, where paid time off is not something that is as available in the UK,
Oh my
most
God, yeah.
most of the job offers I got when I first moved here was kind of 12, 14 days paid time off.
yeah.
And
It's awful, isn't it?
Wow.
that's a real struggle. And it's a privilege to be able to say, oh, that's a real struggle.
Yeah.
But being able to then start my own business where I could decide for myself, like the amount of time I take off versus the amount of time I work to a employer would be ludicrous. But because I'm in charge of that schedule, I can work if I'm going to be, abroad, or I can be here
Yeah,
and I can work as well. And I think that to me has been one of my favorite things, like being able to pick and choose.
yeah.
Yeah.
The women of our time sort of purpose is about helping people have the freedom to breathe. And that's not just a mindfulness thing. That's about a freedom to breathe, to have time to think, reflect, to be, not always to do. And I don't know what your thoughts on this, especially at your age group, because I have a daughter your age, and we've got loads. Ellie's nearly that age, actually. I'm just the old one.
I'm a
But
bit older.
a tiny bit. I think that there's not a lot of freedom to breathe for people of your age. Is that something you've sort of noticed?
Yeah. And I think it's
Yeah.
expectations too.
You what? Sorry.
I think it's expectations.
Oh, expectations. I thought you said exploration. No, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, the expectations that maybe you had when you were younger, and it's not always the outside pressures. I know for myself that I love what I do, and I've been able to find a way that now in my life that works for me, and I'm happy with that. But if I was to probably ask my 15-year-old self, she probably wouldn't recognize what I'm doing now as in alignment with
Yeah.
what she thinks I should be doing. And I think sometimes you just have to sit in the fact that you're at a different stage in life, and
Yeah.
this is what feels good now. And it can be difficult if you have that expectation that is kind of in the back of your mind telling you
Yeah.
that this isn't quite right, or you've not reached that level, or it's not good enough. And
Yeah.
that's before you even get into the outside
Is that
pressures.
what you feel, Elle? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one. I think I feel it, some days I feel it more than others. I think, genuinely, I'm not joking. I think when you get to 27, there is something that you just sort of go, I don't really care anymore. So there is that element of it, but there is I do sort of think
I think
I'm
my
not even
view
sure
is
what I'm
that
saying here, but yes, I agree.
I think, but where I think that there's been a real narrative that hasn't necessarily come from women of the era that I'm at about a pathway and a you know, like at this age you must do this, at this age, you know, like when we have a lot of people who come to sort of, particularly in corporates, who come for advice and help and coaching or workshops and all that, it's always about I need to be promoted. But genuinely, it's one of the biggest things we have, like I need to be promoted, as if like you're on this pathway, this trajectory, particularly in corporates. And like what I see is that it is expectations, but it's also in those people's hearts. They feel like they failed. A friend of ours who's nearly the same age as me, which probably everybody knows, but I won't dox her. Said
We're
something the
learning
other
new
day.
words.
No, I would tell you what, I'm done with the kids. Said, "Oh, I'm really proud. I think at last I'm going to be given the title of director."
It's another hole, isn't it, that you think the title's going to fix or the promotion's going to get you there. No, and yeah, I agree with that.
What learnings do you think you've had from going to clearly we're not going to advise everybody to go to a different culture, but what are some of the things that you think would be like really interesting things for people to think about? How could you apply it in different, particularly the UK, but what are some of the things that you think would be interesting?
I always say I think a spoonful of American confidence would do everybody like the world of good. You know, like a spoonful of sugar. But I
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
something about the innate belief in their own ability to do it, to figure it out, or to even just think that they're worthy of being in certain rooms that I really admire and I've tried to take on, and it's allowed me to like have, I guess, the audacity to think, oh, I should be able to coach executives, I should be able to
Yeah.
which has really helped me. And I think if I look back to when I was, you know, say first starting the grad scheme or maybe even some of my peers, I think if we'd have had a spoonful of that confidence, courage, whatever you want to call it, we maybe would have taken more risks and would have worried less about messing something up, because I just see people here try and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but they don't care, they try again.
It's
And
amazing.
they're proud of the fact that, oh yeah, I used to work here and yeah, this didn't go right, but now I'm starting my own business and this is what I'm doing. Or yeah, I've been
It's
with this.
amazing.
And I just, there's a embracing of the failure in a completely different way, I think. And I think that helps people move quicker and grow.
No, that's really good. Really interesting. Yeah.
I think I do think it's really interesting. Sorry, Karen, go on.
No, it's all right. Go on. After you.
No, I was just going to say, thank you. I was
you very
just
much.
going to say, like, even as you said, a spoonful of American confidence, I felt myself cringe internally because I was like, oh no, not like, but I think that is the wrong attitude to have, because like the opposite of that is the very British, like, sort of, oh no, no, carry on sort of like, what are you doing that for? Well, what are you doing like that for? What you're gonna do? What you doing it by yourself? What? Well, how are you gonna do that? How are you gonna get on with? And like, why not just go? Oh, I think I might adopt a spoonful of American confidence to make myself feel better. Oh no, you got a problem on your hands now.
Yeah.
What if I do? What if I adopt 2 spoonfuls?
I can tell you about one of like the first networking things I went to, and I had that same like internal cringe when I'd hear people talk about certain things or just talk about themselves with so much pride, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, like we're being confident about our own achievements, and it's just very foreign to me
You're
as
like, what's that?
but at the same time, I remember leaving feeling as though I hadn't demonstrated who I was, or there was something still left in the tank.
Rather than what you'd achieved, because that's, I think, significant. If people it
Yeah,
wasn't about what you'd achieved; it was about not demonstrating who you were.
yeah, it just
Because I
felt like
think that's really different.
they hadn't known me, and as much as I could roll my eyes and cringe at somebody else, which is, you know, pretty judgmental, they were confident in who they were, and it gets to the point, I think, you just have to respect someone's authenticity, that that's them and that's how they're showing up. And I think I respect that, and I would rather go in there, feel like I've done my best, and hey, this is me. If people are going to roll their eyes or cringe, that's up to them. That's their judgment. They can carry that. But it's not going to stop me from not giving my all in these situations, and because I've done that, I think that just helped push through when I was maybe nervous or not quite sure. I did that, and I won business, and I got return clients,
well
and I
done.
made an impact, and then it snowballs because you've done it more, you've got more proof for yourself, and for me, I feel like that whole process just changed how I operated.
Awesome. That's cool.
It would. I think it must have been a really interesting thing to have had to adapt to in terms of like your mentality and how you think, which you have, you have told that, because what it's made me think about is all the women that we've had on this podcast so far, and how, God, if you could just give them that, a little bit of that, when all these brilliant things that they've done, whether they've set up their own businesses, or if it's in, the corporate world or whatever it is, but you still hear that reticence of, and then it was this, we'll just move quickly on past like what we've done. And if you could
also,
just...
What about all the people that have said they don't want to come on because they haven't got a story to tell?
Haven't got a story to tell? You think, you do.
And you think, you really have got a story to tell, but it isn't about what you've achieved. It's about who you are.
Yeah. I think that's the difference, though, isn't it? It's having the ability to have the conversation with yourself and separate who you are from what you've achieved. Because I know for me, when I had to leave Pepsi, that was my identity. I worked at Pepsi. That was a big blue chip corporate. That felt impressive to say. And now I'm starting my own business, and I don't have that safety of, the $1 billion brands that they have. And suddenly it's, who am I and what do I stand for? And I kind of seen that within people in my own network of when they retire, they kind of lose that huge identity. They have a bit of an identity crisis about, okay, I'm not that anymore, who am I? And I kind of feel like I went through that at 25, 26 whenever I moved, that suddenly I no longer worked for Pepsi and I didn't have that blue chip thing on my tag. It was, I'm Rachel Malik on my name tag, and people saying, who are you? Not necessarily what do you do, who do you work for, but okay, who are you? So
how did you find that sense of identity then? Because you went through quite a lot in a short space of time, in terms of, you moved into a different phase because you'd got married, you'd moved to a different continent entirely. Not only that, but then it sounds like pretty soon you were creating your own business. So how did you find that sense of identity when everything was happening all in one go?
When you say that, and it doesn't ever feel like I changed that much, but honestly, now you're saying that, oh my gosh, new country, new job, new husband, like I just did everything new.
It's a lot.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe that made it easier because everything was new and I had to start from scratch. I think what also helped was growing up is I moved a lot. When I was doing my forms, I had over 10 addresses to say, historically, where had I lived? I'd lived in Canada, I'd lived in Scotland, I'd moved down to Reddit. I'd done lots of different traveling. And so there was maybe not quite as extreme, but there was always that rip it up, start again. I'm in a new place. I've got to find my grocery store, new group of friends, hobbies, gym, all that kind of stuff you have to do. But I think moving here gave me that time. And, Karen, you're talking about like that sense of being able to pause and space. It gave me that to explore who I was, and the fact I was going into the coaching industry where, you're surrounded by these reflection tools and things like that. I think that hugely helped. I had the time, I had the tools. I just had to sit down and think about who I wanted to be in this next chapter. And, 2-3 years later, that's changed. It continues to change. Well, I think the thing that helped me was holding on to the essence of who I was. We talk about like values and strengths and all that kind of good stuff. They're the things I think help ground me into essence wise, who am I? What do I want to be? What do I want to put out into the world? And then you can kind of build on top of that of what does that look like in a job right now, or what am I interested in?
No, brilliant.
So
really
what next then for you, and what next for the business? So
it's interesting.
World domination.
So I have a couple of contracts out. and I'm waiting
That
to
sounds way weird, that a couple of contracts out. I think you mean work contracts.
Oh yes, sorry, yeah. I have a couple of like work contracts out I'm waiting to hear back from. And
Brilliant.
I think what's a big challenge is within this work that we do as coaches, professional coaches, executive coaches, it's really still viewed as a nice to have. And so with everything that businesses are going through, it's often the first thing that gets cut. And so that continues to be a challenge of figuring out what's the right support for this company, what can they afford, what do they really want to invest in. And then the question I've now been asking myself for the past 6 months is, and do I want to do it?
Yeah.
When you first start out, you don't have that freedom to ask yourself that question. You want to take the work and help and do what you can. But after a couple of times, then I feel like I was able to take a step back and think, okay, now it's about impact. Are they taking the lessons away? Are they doing something with it? And kind of saw that a little bit in February when I ran a workshop where it was targeted towards HR professionals. We're talking about the intergenerational workforce, and I was very hesitant to give them yet another tool because a lot of the faces in the room were familiar. They've gone to lots of different workshops and conferences over the years. And, my challenge to them was go back over the past 12 months. You will have been given a tool, an exercise, something that you haven't tried yet. Try it. And that's really kind of more of the ethos I'm trying to put out now. It's less about gaining X client and more about what's the impact going to be of that. If I feel like the impact is going to be equal to what I'm going to invest in, we'll move forward and do it. But I'm not just going to take a piece of work to tick the box and try it and do it. Yeah.
How do you? Sorry, go on. No, go on.
I just think it's a really interesting thing, particularly for women in the workplace, to try and detach yourself from when you're running your own business and you're advising and consulting. You've got to detach yourself from the outcome. You have to do something and think, well, they might not do anything with it, but you can 100% take responsibility for impact. And I think that's a really good thing to talk about, because that means you have got accountability and responsibility for your choices without saying I'm responsible for the outcome, because you're not. You can't, especially in coaching. It's not, that is an arrogance to think you're. So I think it's really good to mention that, Rach, about impact, because all of us in every single thing we do can say we're going to have an impact. So no, thank you. Sorry, Elle. Sorry.
I was going to say a sort of similar thing. I was going to say, how do you sort of I was going to say wrangle, but not, because I can't think what the word is. Well, it's like, how do you wrangle that? Because we've been in many a company where the second you walk through the door, you can go in, you can say whatever you want to say. It's not going to change the culture of that company, because I think you can tell pretty quickly which companies are genuinely interested and really do want to make a change, and which companies are ticking a box. But to me, what I've always because you inevitably end up having those individual conversations with people, and that's where I saw the most impact, because it didn't really matter what the company said it was going to do next, but if you can make a difference with one person, then it has been worth it. So I think it was going to be a sort of rambly question about, so how do you cope with not being able to make the change at a systemic level. I don't know whether systemic's the right word, but you know what I'm trying to say.
No, I understand where you're going with that. I agree with you. I always think one-to-one, smaller groups are always going to be more impactful. And I start that conversation with the companies I work with, that actually, what are they trying to do? We get really clear on, why are you trying to do this? Why now? What is this piece of work? And try and help them understand that if they want this, big total cultural change, then you can't start top down. It has to be at the individual level, because we're individuals. I don't, when I worked at Pepsi, I didn't go and work at Pepsi. I went to work in a specific team with these 3 people.
Yeah.
Like, that was my working experience. It wasn't necessarily working at Pepsi. And I just try and help them understand how I work, what coaching is, what is the individual impact, and the ripple up effect of that. And I think part of that vetting process now, I'm in a position where I can have more of those discussions, like you're saying, Ellie. Is this a company that is really keen to do this? Do they want to do this piece of work? Or have they been tasked to, tick the box, and they want a workshop that after 60 minutes, everyone's going to leave and go, wow, I'm going to be so different afterwards, which isn't realistic. How can we repurpose that budget for a 60-minute workshop and, target some key super connectors or some influencers within the company? So that's kind of how I think.
Is it something that you find difficult to not cope with? I don't mean cope with, but is it something where you go, oh God, I really, or do you just think, well, I'll do what I can, and that's all I can do, sort of thing?
I feel like at the start I was more in that first one, because when you start out as a coach, you think, great, I've got all these tools, I'm going to go and help people, and then you come back into session 3 or 4 and you think, oh, but I thought we discussed this at the first session. And then you gain experience, you gain wisdom, and realize actually more of what coaching is, or the coaching that I do now. And I think, not to get too technical, but that whole transactional analysis, like adult to adult relationship, I feel comfortable being in that situation with somebody and being able to say, right, this is what I'm responsible for, this is what I'm bringing, what are you responsible for, what are you taking away? And if they decide that they're going to take away less than I would like them to take away, that's my feelings that I have to be responsible for, and that I think, again, that separation has helped me.
I think it's really interesting seeing the growth of the coaching industry, because it's really, over the last 10 years, escalated into it being a choice for people. Being a coach and earning money from it is really hard. Let's start at the old Maslow's hierarchy of needs stuff. Being a coach, and a lot of people come to coaching and they want to make this massive difference, but you're not in control of those. You can't. So I think for me, what I've learned, and I think it's something that I think you're on your journey of, is coaching is part of something. Like it's, and I think we always say to people, we are big firm believers of it. Me and Ellie are firm believers of counsellors and coaches because of what the need they do. But I think for women, I think it's really important because it's their space. It's their safe space. And I think as a coach, you have an ethical duty to create a space that abides. Sorry, this is rambling because it's my rant, but I am so concerned about coaches being offered to people who don't hold that person safely. And they don't hold the psychological stuff. And it really, sorry, I know this is about you, Rach, but this is about me now. It really worries me.
I think something we're going to see in the next few years is going to be huge, because I don't think that the vast majority of providers train for it. I don't think they set up new coaches with a true understanding of what that looks like. And, we dance in a very interesting space as coaches. We're not therapists. We're not, I was going to say consultants. Well, we're not those either, but we're not counselors. And, when you work with somebody who maybe is in therapy, maybe isn't in therapy, like, have you got that language? Have you got that knowledge and the ethical nature in yourself to be able to say, we need to take a pause. So this is outside of my scope. This isn't what I'm trained to do. And I've done that a few times with people who said, oh no, I'm fine to talk about this. And you have to say, I'm not professionally trained to go in this direction and talk about this issue. It's really important we have this boundary. And I agree with you, Karen. I don't think that as coaches, unfortunately, we highlight ethics enough. And I think actually that's something I talk to companies up front about. I'm like, what's your ethical policy? Like, if something happens, or let's say I'm working with somebody and they decide to leave, we need to discuss all this kind of stuff up front, because that's a reality, but it may be separate from coaching. I wouldn't help somebody to leave a company in the coaching sessions, but they might share something like that with me. And if you haven't had that ethical conversation up front, there are just lots of nuances, I think, in coaching that I wish people would highlight more, because it damages the relationship, it damages people's reputation, but it damages the industry too.
Yeah, I'm going to have to be quiet now about that. So So it's nearly time for us to go, Rachel. So is there anything else that we haven't covered that, like that's been on your mind or that has bubbled up as we've been talking that you'd like to share before we let you go?
There's one thing. There's one thing I wrote down, which was, "Do I deserve a coach?" And that is a question which a couple of the younger professionals I've been working with, it's come up as a bit of a theme that their companies have been making the investment in them as individuals. They see them as high potentials and they invest in coaching. But I think more broadly, I would love to see more younger professionals understand the value that they bring to these organizations, and that how coaching really could help them, it could support them, but also whether it's a coach, whether it's a mentor, whatever that looks like, they deserve to be able to take control of their career, decide what course they're going to chart and just go for it. I think sometimes we feel as in a certain company, we should be grateful that we were able to get into that company in the first place, and we just work really hard and keep our head down. And I would love to see more of that question of, what is possible for me within
Research we've done shows that the hardest years, particularly for a woman, I'm sure they're for men as well, but I can't talk to that because the research wasn't that. The hardest years for people in their roles are probably from like 25 to 34. And that is the time when coaching isn't seen as needed. So, I agree with you. I think that if coaching was interspersed at different life stages, so that age, also when people are like 50, 55, when they're looking for purpose. But I think there's a whole bigger question first on that, which is people in those industries have to see the value of coaching in its entirety. Is, not that we should stop us from doing it, but I think that's the biggest challenge.
Well, I
like
think
what you said about coaching being, it's not the thing, it's a part of something.
Yeah.
And I think if more companies maybe took more of that holistic approach to, it could be something which is a tool, it's useful to people in the company. We maybe see more people take it up and results of that change.
I think as well, like on an individual level, it is that I don't know whether off the top of the head deserving of it would be what you said or thought, but it is ultimately what it is. And I think, particularly in that 25 to 34 thing, I can see how it happens, because 25, you're at the beginning of your journey, really, aren't you? So you're probably thinking, well, it sounds great, but maybe when I move on to the next thing, maybe when I've got that promotion, maybe
senior leader.
And let's be honest as well. Likelihood is you can't afford it, because you're not in the position where you've got tons and tons of spare cash. And then you do move into that next position, which is a bit more stable and a bit more, okay, well, I've done it, I've got the promotion, so maybe I don't need it now because I've done what I've said I was going to do. And if I want to do something, maybe I'll do it in 5 years' time, sort of thing. So I think it is that deserving thing, but I don't know whether it would come into your head as, do I deserve to do this? If that makes sense.
Do I need, probably? I don't think I need one.
Ellie, like you're saying, like, I don't need it because now I've done the thing, or I've got the promotion.
Or I don't want it is another one I think is really interesting. I don't want it. It's performance issues. It's performance issues. I don't want it. But you really need it. It's a good conversation.
It is. It's really interesting. I was going to say
all afternoon for Rachel.
No, definitely. This has been really a really interesting conversation, Rachel. Thank you so much for coming on to talk to us. And I don't know what the time is over there for you, so I hope it wasn't too early. Okay, not too bad then. That's fine. I was going to say thanks for coming on so early.
When I did my coach training, it was with a UK provider, and I was in New York, so I had to get up at 4 a.m. for like a full day training session. This is
dedication.
It is dedication, and I think I do think on that as well. I know we didn't talk a lot about it, but I do think it's. No, let me word it nicer. I think training is the responsible thing to do, even though technically nobody has to, which is insane. By the way, Same for counsellors. You could go out tomorrow and say you were a counsellor. No one's there to... Anyway,
regulate.
Right.
We're back to
Stop me now.
In the many years I've been a coach, and I think it's probably about 20 now, I coach, well, you know what I coach. I shouldn't really say this on this, but hey, here you go. I've never
I'll cut it
once
out.
been asked for a certificate ever.
Yeah.
They just, if they like you and they think your impact is good, even though I wanted to proudly take my chartership certificate with me.
Can I tell you a really very short, very unfortunate story actually that happened to me a couple of years ago? I was potentially going to work for a company over here as a coach, and we were having those back and forth conversations. And I was talking about how, ethics are important to me and getting the right training. And this person said, "Look, Rachel, no one's going to hire you because you did training." And I remember sitting there thinking, but the only reason I think I can deliver some of this is because I have actual training on it. And there's probably some truth to what this individual said, because they had, 35 plus years career. They'd ran a very successful business. They'd sold it. And really, I think people came to them more for mentorship than they did for coaching. But that's, that's another story. But I do remember thinking, but I don't think that's correct. I think if you're going to hire somebody, you should check that they have the qualifications. And,
that's what I say. Do you really want to see my certificate?
Yeah,
I do think as well, like you all know, and you know that you've got that to fall back on. And I just ultimately think it's the more responsible thing to do, and I won't hear otherwise.
No, you've got people's lives at risk. People are vulnerable. They show
up it is. It's really vulnerable. Right. And again, I didn't want to ask the question because I felt like, maybe we'll have to come back, Rachel, and do it all over again on a different one. But I think it is, I think that must be really interesting, particularly for you two, because you both do it, is that sort of line of things could quite easily cross into counselling or therapy territory. And that must be really difficult for you guys to draw back, because as you say, that's not what you're trained to do. But it's anyway, all interlinked. Right. I am going to be quiet because otherwise we'll never leave. But thank you for coming on and taking the time and giving us such an interesting conversation. So the last question I have for you before we go then is, if you're listening to something that sort of makes you happy or brings you joy, what would that be?
I prepped for this, so
good girl.
So my answer for this one. So I'm trying to learn Arabic at the moment, and so as part of reverting to Islam, we have to pray a certain number of times a day. But when we do that, we recite a certain part of the Quran, and so the verse we recite, it's called Surah Fatiha, and so I say that more than 5 times a day, multiple times. But I think something to listen to, something that grounds me, something that helps just, tap back into something other than what I'm immediately doing right now, and just, break away sort of from the world. That's something that I love to listen to.
Is that like the equivalent of a mantra, like, like where they chant in lots of different, only because I've done yoga, what I really like about it is the cadence of the music. Do you like of the words?
It's a very musical, like how it's recited is, there's intonation, and it's
that's what
thank God I'm able to I'm able to work on it now, but when I started it was definitely more slow. Now I think I have my rhythm down for this, because I'm saying it every day. But I think there are so many different verses that you could listen to that just audibly it clicks. You're able to connect to something. And I need to read the translation of it, not Fatiha, I know that one, but for some of the verses I'm still trying to learn the meaning of it. But even just listening to it and not knowing the meaning of it,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much, Rachel. I hope you've had you have enjoyed it as much as we have.
Thank you, Rach.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for listening, and we will speak to you next time. Bye.